Welcome to MissouriNet.com. I'm Bill Pollock. We are getting ready for Mizzou and Florida this week, and I'm very happy to have Austin Kim with me from KMIZ-TV in Columbia. I've been on his Sunday night sports show a couple of times. He's been on our Hangouts. We started these all the way back at the SEC Championship game last December, so we have him back on preseason. Now we got him for the first time during the regular season, I think. So it kind of slipped on me, Austin. I've been meaning to have you on here a few more times, and it just kind of slips away, and you get busy. So I've got to change that.
Well, yeah, I think we're all trying to get in our group, back in our groove. I think the Missouri offense is also trying to get back in its groove too, huh?
Yeah, no doubt. Listen, I think Nick Chubb almost ran for as many yards as what the entire offense was able to put up on Saturday. A bad game, another bad offensive showing. I didn't think that they did all that bad against Indiana. They were in position to win that game. They lost, they won. I don't think they were focused. But in terms of just the offense, though, they didn't move the ball very well against South Carolina. They put together 2 drives in the final 7 minutes and 25 seconds. How that happened, I'm still kind of scratching my head with. As much as South Carolina's defense dominated that game, now we see a full game where Georgia shuts them down. Austin, what do you see as the issues or the problems with Mizzou's offense the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think it's a trust thing. I think we hear this word all the time: execute, execute, execute. I mean, you wish it were just that simple, but it might just take a week where they just go back to basics, where they're not trying to do too much. I think Maddie can just start looking at some shorter routes. I think the receivers have to know that they're not going to be, running all over the place, because I think Maddie, especially as the game went on against Georgia, he's really started to get some happy feet. And he kind of he started to really just, escape the pocket when maybe he had a little bit more time. Maybe he had a second or two more. Especially late in that game, the offensive line I thought played a little bit better. You saw him kind of standing there, and maybe the receivers need to do a better job of getting open, following their route a little bit better. Because keep in mind, there were still some young receivers out there: Jamon Moore, Lawrence Lee. They did make a couple catches, but they weren't as wide open as maybe Maddie would have liked. So the whole consideration of design rollouts, I think that might be something that Josh Henson, the offensive coordinator of Missouri, considers. I think that's something that might benefit this offensive line, where you kind of just, you move the pocket a little bit. So I think, a change in strategy a little bit, some fine adjustments, and possibly just maybe an attitude change of, I'm not going to do everything by myself. I have to kind of trust that everyone's going to do their job, and that way it's going to be easier for me to do my own job.
Now, Austin, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to make it sound negative, and you may think this, but I had people that were tweeting me, and I read some tweets that say, hey, maybe we need to get Mock out of there and put Prince in the game. Gary Pinkel said that never crossed his mind at all. I didn't think that was certainly necessary at all, but were you at any point in that game thinking, boy, maybe Mock needs to sit for a little bit and kind of get his head together, and maybe a change of scenery back there might help this team?
I only thought about the possibility of sitting Matty Mock very, very late in the game just for injury's sake. Gary Pinkel has never pulled a quarterback, and at least that I can recall since he took this job in 2000, strictly on performance. Maybe there was something that some of those other, if he did, maybe there was something else that had slipping my mind in terms of what he considered. But he's going to stand by his guy, and I think that's the right move in terms of confidence and making sure you send a message to everyone that Matty Mock is your quarterback. And quite honestly, Matty Mock is light years better than what Eddie Prince is or anyone else. I mean, there's really no doubt about it. I mean, he showed that in the spring game, training camp, et cetera, et cetera. That was my only consideration, and luckily for Missouri, they're not talking about a quarterback injury like they have in years past. I think some people may say it's lucky, but I think Gary Pinkel is very adamant about sticking with your guy even during tough times, and I don't think he cares what other people think. He's never cared. What the whole James Franklin thing last year, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, with the whole painkiller thing. talking about Franklin being soft. He doesn't care about what a lot of people think. So the fact that he stuck with this guy for so long in the entire game does not surprise me at all.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point about the injury point. You certainly wouldn't want him to get hurt in a game where it's 27, 34 nothing. But in turn for the fans who said, hey, we need to mix this up. Listen, nobody, at least at the quarterback position, better than Matty Mock right now. And it would be silly and it would be suicide to send somebody in there with less experience, because I think there's other issues, Austin. Young receivers that I don't think are running the best routes. They may be running routes that are too deep. That may be a play calling thing with Josh Henson. They might have to change that up. But the offensive line, I've been hearing from Mitch Morse, Evan Boehm for the last couple of weeks. Boy, we see things on film, and it's just a couple little minor things we have to fix. But I've been hearing that since after the Toledo game. So at what point does that stuff get fixed? It's got to happen soon.
Yeah, that falls on the players, and then that falls on the coaches. I mean, it's the team's responsibility. I mean, they can say all they want to the media and reporters and try and fool everyone, but until you go out there and you take care of business, people are going to continue to doubt you. And I think you really can't fault outsiders for saying that. There's so many people that care about this team. There's a lot of fans that invest time and money into this team, so they feel like they want to see the product that they deserve. They also maybe aren't as grateful when the team does well too. So there's the devil's advocate side of everything as well. But from our perspective, Bill, when we have to continually see these guys every week on Mondays and every time after the game, they don't. I think they still have to face the music and answer the questions. And for about 8 of these guys, they do, especially after a loss. But I think this team has to have another one of those moments where they need to realize that, okay, we've seen what this team can do. I mean, they flipped the switch against South Carolina in the last 7 minutes of the game, where they looked incredibly good. Like, they looked like they were the SEC East division leaders. And then against Georgia, they looked like they were, basically Vanderbilt. It's incredible that this team can show you so much and then go out and show so little. And I think this team is trying to figure out, it's still trying to mature, still trying to find out what exactly it is. And I think it's frustrating from the fact that you've seen the good side of them, you've seen the bad side of them. And I think it's just going to take another, a realization moment, a eureka moment where they're like, you know what, we're good. Football, learn how to bring practice, all those good practices that they've had, and translate them into a game.
Right. Yep. You're absolutely right. All right. So we think things are in shambles here in Columbia. Let's go down to Gainesville, and there's talk that, especially after their loss against LSU 30-27, there's talk there that Muschamp might be playing for his job, and that even a win here, I mean, he's going to have to pull off some big games. Last game of the season at Florida State, maybe this with Missouri, they're in a shambles. What do you see from Mizzou this week against the Gators?
I think this is, if there's one team that I think Mizzou can really take advantage of and really kind of help out their resume, it's Florida. I mean, you guys heard about the game against LSU. Florida turned the ball over 3 times. LSU was able to control the majority of that game. I think they were controlling the ball for about 36 minutes of that game. And then they were still able to get within a field goal of that game, and that's what they end up losing that one. I mean, Jeff Driscoll was responsible for 2 of those turnovers. You're seeing Treon Harris, and Treon Harris could be that spark plug. That's what's maybe so scary about this Florida team is you might gonna get lulled by Jeff Driscoll, and all of a sudden you bring in a more dynamic player in Treon Harris, and I think that's going to be kind of key for Florida is when you use Jeff Driscoll, when you use Treon Harris, and if Missouri isn't ready for that, ready for the possibility of of Harris escaping the pocket, that might be something difficult for a team who's just kind of getting back on track rushing wise, but they haven't really faced anyone who's been able to scramble a whole lot and get a lot of yardage. So I'm very curious to see how this defense is going to do. And look, the defense has actually played well. They played extremely well, considering that they were on the field for about 46 minutes of that game. But Florida, maybe their defensive line, defensively they really don't scare most people. They are clearly a team that is in trouble on offense, on trouble on defense, and this is a team that Missouri should be able to beat if it's playing to its potential. Now, we haven't been able to say that about this team for about 3 weeks now. So, I think it's all just kind of a unsettling game for both the Florida fan bases and the Missouri fan bases. I think a lot of people will just kind of be swerving in their chair for the majority of Saturday nights.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. You talk about their defense. That was supposed to be their strong point. I don't think that's scared anybody. Their offensive line has only allowed 5 sacks this year, so that'll be a real good matchup because I agree with you. I think Mizzou's defense has played pretty well. And when I looked at the schedule, I think we all figured 4-0 in conference play, and then we looked at these non-conference, and then we looked at these 3 games and said, all right, you're gonna be able to tell whether or not Missouri's going to make a run at this division based on these 3 games. And you probably looked at it. Most people said, all right, they're going to lose at South Carolina, got a good chance of playing Georgia at home, and then the toss-up game is Florida. And if you come out of this 2-1, then you're in pretty good shape. And that's really where the Tigers can still end up. And so, despite being tripped up by Indiana, despite the bad showing against Georgia, they could still go 2-1 through this stretch, and if they show signs that they're moving in the right direction, then everything is par for the course for this season.
I mean, they still have plenty of opportunities to really make a name for themselves. I mean, they still have a game against Kentucky, and people are like, well, but it's Kentucky. Kentucky's a little bit better now. I mean, they're on the rise. They're slowly making that rise. I think the only weak part in that schedule is Vanderbilt. But again, that's probably the only one that I still think is the winnable game on the schedule right now. It just depends on what kind of. I can't see Missouri playing that bad for the rest of the season on offense. So that's why I'm pretty confident in that Vanderbilt one that the Tigers beat Vanderbilt. But yeah, I mean, you figure I think most Missouri fans would have taken 1-1 in that South Carolina Georgia stretch. And I think you still take it. I think you say if they lost against South Carolina, you got beat down in South Carolina, and then you do pretty well against Georgia. I think we're having a completely different conversation. If that actually happened, we didn't. We don't. We didn't see that. We saw a whole lot of struggle in that Georgia game. So I think this is going to be a really telling stretch. Can Mizzou beat a SEC East team, on the road? Can they beat down on the team that they should beat down on, which are Kentucky and Vanderbilt? And then you start to get really in the tough part of the schedule with Texas A&M on the road, Tennessee on the road, Arkansas in a rivalry game. Arkansas is much improved, even though they don't have an SEC win yet. So I think there's still plenty of opportunities for Missouri to slip up, but also for a chance for them to climb out of the hole that they've kind of dug for themselves.
All right, well, we're halfway through the season, and at a crossroads, I guess would be a good way to say it. So Mizzou and Florida, this is a big one, a lot of SEC East implications, and it'll be a real telling sign as to just how good or what direction this Mizzou offense is headed in after Saturday. So Austin from KMIZ-TV, Austin Kim, KMIZ-TV, Columbia, thank you so much for your time. I know you've been busy with Mizzou and the Royals and the Cardinals. You've been driving all over the state, staying up late like all of us, but it's an exciting time of year.
Oh, it's great, man. I love the fact that we still could have an I-70 series, and Mizzou football, there's never a dull moment with them.
No, absolutely not. And just a reminder, too, basketball scrimmages tonight. So, I mean, if you are just completely against baseball and you're ready for hoops, You can go out to Mizzou Arena tonight at 5:30. They've got the men and the women. They'll be putting on a skills competition and scrimmaging, and that all of a sudden now kind of takes a back seat to what's been going on here in Missouri.
But it's a whole lot of fun. Can't wait to see what Robin Pinchon and Kim Anderson do with their teams, and we get to see Kim Anderson in the squad for the first time.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Austin, thanks a lot for your time. Thanks for watching us, and remember to continue to follow coverage at KMIZ if you're in the Columbia area. Also, check them out. Hey, what's your website online?
ABC17news.com.
ABC17 News. Check them out. Check our stuff out at MissouriNet.com. And thanks for watching this Google Hangout.